Welcome. Welcome, everyone, to the Magers and Quinn YouTube channel. My name is Annie. I am the events coordinator at Magers and Quinn Booksellers, which, if you're not familiar with us, is an independent bookstore in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We are very pleased to be bringing you another virtual author event, this time a wonderful panel of 3 authors of some recent sci-fi titles. And we are going to be hearing today from Daniel Benson, Trilby Black, and Neil Sharpson, all about their new books. You're going to hear a little bit from each of the titles, and then they're going to have a conversation, and then there will be a chance to ask some questions where, at the end of the event, I'll come back on and help facilitate those. When you are watching, you can type your question into the YouTube chat at any time. So we'll be getting to the questions at the end, but you can write them at any time. You can also just let us know where you're watching from. These authors are speaking from a bunch of different places all over the world. So it's cool to see where people are tuning in from. And I will also be putting information about the books in the chat as well, and how to order them. So Magers and Quinn does have a website. I'll be putting that into the chat. And those of you who pre-registered for this event do have a $5 off coupon code for use on the website. That code is going to be valid through the end of August, so you have plenty of time to use it. We highly suggest using it on one of these wonderful books, but it does work for anything on our website. And at the moment, credit card processing on our website is down. So if you must have your book today or tomorrow, please give us a call. I'll put the phone number in the chat as well. We ship everywhere, including internationally. So no worries there. Wherever you're watching from, we can probably get the book to you. But keep checking back on our website as well if you would like to use that code online as it is intended. The code will be honored on the phone as well. So I will get out of your hair in just a second here. I just want to introduce the speakers that you're going to be hearing from today. Daniel M. Benson writes science fiction, alternate history, and fantasy. He's the author of Junction, its sequel Interchange, the comic book First Knife, and the Sidewise award-winning short story Treasure Fleet. He resides in Sofia, Bulgaria, with his daughter's wife and in-laws. Trilby Black is an academic science editor who previously worked in astronautics, blue sky research, and academia, with stints between running a wooden passenger ferry, teaching math in the local youth prison, and raising 2 children. She has lived in Colorado, France, Texas, and the UK, and currently works and lives with her family in Suffolk, England. And the novel you'll be hearing about today is her first novel. So thank you for being here, Trilby. And finally, Neil Sharpson studied in University College Dublin, where he was a member of UCD Dransoch and honed his skills as a writer. And he is a graduate of Abbey Theatre's new playwrights program and has been commissioned by the Abbey twice, been shortlisted for the McGuire International Playwriting Award, writes for the Irish Superhero Comic League of Volunteers, and is the founder of the comedy review blog Unshaved Mouse. His first novel, When the Sparrow Falls, is what you're going to be hearing about today. Thank you all for being here. We're going to hear from all these books. Also, I should mention there are going to be some interludes where we give away some prizes. So that will be fun. Daniel's going to talk about that. And I'll be back later in the hour to take your questions. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. It's cool. We actually sorry, go ahead, Neil.
I was just going to say, I love the fact that we have a kind of like a nice message from Daniel's wife, but it's not for Daniel, it's for Trilby. That is such a writer-wife thing to do.
Oh, bless her.
She's the Ferrari of wives. Because it would shrink my screen down to the point where I can't see anything if I had the comments open. So the comments are closed. So I have no idea what people are saying. So you can say whatever you want about me. I was going to say it's cool that there are 4 of us, including Annie, and we're from 4 different countries. So that's interesting,
Well, it's like Annie was saying, it's kind of like one good thing to come out of COVID is just how it's kind of just knocked down barriers between, like, if you had an in-person event, you would never have this kind of like this global spread of kind of like of people. So my neighbor has just sent me a message on WhatsApp asking how she logs in. So I'm just going to send her a link.
Okay, well, how shall we start? Would you like for me to start with the reading? Or
let's go for it.
Okay,
Let's
yeah.
start
So
with the reading.
this is my novel. It's Finnegan's Awake, and it's a YA thriller. The main character is Rain Wooten. It's set in Texas, and she's been trained as a secret agent since she was a young child. She's a teenager now, and she fights crime from her basement in Fort Worth, Texas. But it turns out her dad is not a secret agent after all. He's a con man. And so in this passage, she's recalling one of the incidents from her childhood. Oh, sorry, no glasses. Oh, no, and that's not the passage either. Oh, well, we'll go with this one. This is where she's escaping from the FBI agents by running into the bomb shelter that's been in her basement, in her backyard since she's been a child. She's just locked the door on the FBI agents. I stood there in the foul gloom, sniffing cautiously, trying to identify the stink. It was the smell of rotten meat. Like a possum had gotten into the composting toilet and become trapped. My eyes had not yet adjusted from the bright sun outside, but I took a step down into the shelter. Through the metal door behind me, I could hear a rhythmic banging. The FBI were using some sort of tool to break in. They sounded desperate. If this was all a plot to make me give up my dad, it was a pretty elaborate one. I would probably have a while before they made it through the door, though. We built that door to last. It might give way to a jackhammer, but I assumed that if these FBI were as bureaucracy-ridden as my dad had led me to believe, that would take a few hours to arrange. My foot twisted for real, and I fell, bumping my hip on the wall. I bent down. Something had been left on the steps, several somethings. At first, I thought it was a dead possum and reeled back. Then I opened them and looked again. It turned out to be a pile of blankets, some books, and an empty water bottle. Anything on the steps is always a tripping hazard, but in a critical path, it can be lethal. Damn it, I shouldn't have let Dad take care of the bomb shelter by himself. He wasn't always that tidy. I knew that. I should have come down and made sure these little details were properly taken care of. I stepped over the clutter and continued down. At the bottom, I hit the light switch and discovered it wasn't just the stairs that had been left a mess. The entire bomb shelter was reduced to total chaos. Clothes, unwashed dishes, and packets of food were scattered everywhere. The first aid kit lay open on the table, its inside spilled onto the surface. The antibiotics bottle was open and empty. A pool of vomit congealed on the blankets on the lower bunk. In deep shadows, a human shape covered by blankets. I froze, but the shape did not move. It was so still. It might even have been just a human-looking pile of blankets. But the tip of a definitely human nose just caught the dim light. Picking up a coffee mug, it was the heaviest thing in arm's reach. I crept closer, but I needn't have bothered. She was long past caring about me. Nothing alive could smell that bad. She clutched the blankets to her chest, even in death. Her skin was a deep brown, receding into black in the shadows of the blanket. I couldn't see her body, but a bare foot poked out, the bones of her feet, high ridges under the skin. Her hair was braided into uneven rows that had grown out and morphed into dreads. I could see where she had fastened the braids with the plastic tabs that keep bread bags closed. I backed up, covering my face with my shirt, all the hairs on my neck standing straight up. She'd come down here, eaten all my food, swallowed all my medicine, and then crawled into bed to die. What had killed her? I shook my head to clear it. There was no denying that something had made her very sick, and it might still be down here. Maybe I'd already breathed it in. Maybe my only hope was to run back up the stairs, surrender to Fred and Peter, and hope they would take me to a hospital. But then, the bastards would come down there with their forensic team, and I would never know the truth. I took an experimental breath from my t-shirt. No congestion blocked my lungs. I held up my hands, understandably tense, but not cramping or twitching. Not a nerve agent then. The vomit was old and dry. It was a risk, but if I didn't touch it, or her... A quiet humming caught my attention. I picked my way through the detritus to the back of the room, to the multi-monitor computer Dad and I had left down here. Eerie how the electronics went on about its business while the rest of the room decayed. The desk was a bit dusty, but I could see no fluids or anything on the keyboard. What the hell? I hit the mouse with my hand and the screen came to life. The desktop wallpaper was a photo. I recognized the scene with something like a thump in my gut. That fawn brown dead grass, that denim blue sky, the Rocky Mountains beneath it, It was Colorado Springs, the last place we had all lived together. Mom, Dad, and me before Mom was killed, and Dad and I went on the run that last time. My knees suddenly felt quite shaky, and I sat down in the chair. I turned my attention to the windows that littered the desktop. Some potted signals in real time. Others scrolled text, each with a hashtag title. CBF Live, helmet sticker, hashtag Friday Focus. The scrolling text was made up of tweets in real time about football. Strange. A small back window in a corner looked like a command shell. I hit the up arrow to retrieve the last command. Set debug level equal 2. Sweet. I deleted the 2, replaced it with a 3, hit enter, and watched the screen light up with color. Text messages began to scroll. So it took me maybe an hour to figure out what was going on. At the end of it, I knew what she'd been doing while living in my bomb shelter. I also knew how she died. Okay.
Ha! How'd she die?
You have to buy the book to read and find out.
Yeah. That's real stuff. I hadn't thought when I was reading it. I didn't hear her voice as clearly as you did it, and I didn't realize how unreliable that narrator is. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Hearing it now for the second time. It's like, oh, it's a nerve agent. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a very unreliable narrator. In fact, when I did the outline for the book, I actually had to do an Excel spreadsheet. One was reality as she saw it. One was reality as it actually exists. And then I had 2 more columns for what other people believed were happening as well.
Mm.
So.
Yeah, I don't think people often don't realize the kind of like the books that we write while we're writing the books, like the reams and reams of documentation that you have to kind of like that never sees the light of day. Like I know I have like an Excel spreadsheet with like 200 years of Caspian history, just because you can.
Yeah, because and you don't want to. You want to have that document as well because you don't want to write something and then 3 months later write something else that doesn't match up.
Yeah, you have to keep yourself honest. You have to kind of like every time someone mentions like a week or a day or a month, you have to kind of like note it down and say, okay, so this happened then, so I can't have anything happen at that particular time.
Yeah. Well, are we going to talk more about spreadsheets or should I give away some stuff?
I think it's time for a raffle.
All right, it's time for a raffle.
Good.
I have everyone who has retweeted or reblogged our thing. I'm putting it into the random number generator. This is all very official and not a scam. Okay. Random on. Is it working?
We can hear it working.
Okay, you can hear it working. It's going dee. But why is it not giving me? No, that's not right. Hold on a second. Go back. Because there are 13 people here, so I should have 13 entries in the list that it generates. Randomize. There we go. Okay, the first one up is Mariam C. Kenna 5. And this is an email, so I know we can find you. Are you here in the chat? Say something or write something if you're here in the chat. Well, I'm going to write your name down anyway. We'll find you. We'll hunt you down.
We'll DM, yes.
That sounds very sinister. That's a good, real kind of like Liam Neeson kind of like, I will find you.
Yeah, well, we will find you. And we will
give you books.
And we'll give you Finnegan's Awake. All right. Shall we hear from Neil now?
I thought.
You're going to hear from me, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
I've got my own plan. Okay. Well, speaking of unreliable narrators.
So are you reading from Junction or are you reading from the next one?
Well, no, right. I'm reading from the book that's written. I should probably tell you something about it, right? So
yes, I think you should.
Here I go back to full screen. So I'm Daniel Benson. This is Junction. This is the book that came out last week, and it's now available everywhere, including at Magers and Quinn, including the one that we'll send to you when we find you, whoever wins the next raffle. This is the second book in the series that I think people are calling the Junction series. The first book in the series is called Junction, and it's about a planet where, for unknown reasons, there are wormholes dotted around the planet, and anything that walks through the wormhole on some other planet will end up on this one. And because they're all on various alien planets, over the millions of years that they've been there, these various alien biomes have spilled out of their wormholes and colonized the area of Junction that's centered around the wormhole. One of those is Earth. It turns out that there's always been a wormhole to another planet in the highlands of New Guinea, and nobody knew about it except the people who lived there. And so the second book is Junction, and it takes place a year after the first book. And the main character is the biologist who was the person who made the planet known to the rest of us. And she feels a bit guilty about that now. The rows of cages extended for maybe 30 meters. That was smaller than the defensive perimeter around the far side base. Smaller than the length of the plane that had flown them into the New Guinea highlands. To Anne, though, if you added up the flight from Sapporo to Jakarta, Jakarta to Jayapura, Jayapura to nearside base, and the wormhole dropped down who knows how many light years to the planet Junction, the walk between the animal cages was still the longest. The cages had been stacked 3 or 4 high and lined up to form a sort of gauntlet along the path that led from the far side base to what had once been the village of Imsame. Made of green saplings cut apart and tied back together with wire or wicker work, the cages gave any jet and wormhole-lagged newcomer an excellent view of the animals inside. Here was a land aster from the lighthouse biome, like a giant plastic-shelled starfish. There, a scaly bug-like reaper from the sweet blood biome stood under the dried skin of a dire shmoo from the glasslands. Anne had watched one of those things kill somebody, but looking at this spiny silicone sack, she felt only exhausted sorrow. She registered a turtle and a shivering tree kangaroo before she had to close her eyes, but still the animals cried out. They stank. They suffered, palpably. "What's this?" asked Daisuke, and Anne put out her hand to push him forward. "Don't stop," she said. "Don't look. Don't engage, or someone will try to sell you one of these poor things." Then what would she do, caught between the moral imperative to relieve suffering and the market incentive that she would create if she gave this bastard any money? She weighed an extra 25 kilos on Junction, and she wanted to lie down. "Hello," said an Indonesian accented voice. "You like that eagle?" Daisuke said, which wasn't a no at all. Anne opened her eyes so she could glare at Daisuke's back. "What, is this your first animal market? I said don't engage." "You might be interested in this bird," Daisuke said, and you could practically hear the cash register noises from the merchant. "No, Daisuke, I'm trying not to look at it," Anne groaned out. "If I do, I'll feel how bad it feels, and I'll want to fucking buy it." "Bad?" The merchant's breath puffed in her face, and Anne's eyes popped open. "They don't feel bad," he declared. "My animals are all safe." Anne cursed. Behind her, Farhad chuckled. "That's a bad marketing strategy, my friend," he informed the merchant. "You should tell her that your animals are in constant misery, so she'll feel compelled to save all of them." Amy cleared her throat, and the tycoon chuckled. "Excuse my insensitivity, Anne. Would you like me to buy all of these creatures and set them free? Then we can find the caravan." "No," Anne said, and the merchant at the same time. "Someone would just capture them again. What?" "I said no," the merchant repeated. The dealers in illicit animals Anne had met previously had been walnut-faced old villains, infinite in age and cynicism. This guy, though, couldn't have been more than 29. He was small and twitchy, with a sharp-featured face and a haircut that made Anne think military. "You don't set them free," he ordered. "You take care of them in your laboratory. Scientists, right? You're not army." "Yes," said Daisuke. "Does the caravan have room for an eagle?" asked Farhad. Amy said. "And would your research be improved by this specimen?" Anne didn't answer. The creature had indeed caught her attention. It was not an eagle. Not at all. "Oh," said Anne. "Oh, wow." Rather than a beak, The animal had a fluffy, tapering snout. Brown fluff covered its body, which terminated in a stubby little tail from which spouted a pair of ribbon-like white plumes. It had no talons, which meant it didn't use its feet to hunt. And I think I want to stop there. Yeah. Because you're going to hear more about the animal if you buy the book.
Just my friend Amelia is in the chat here, and I think that book would be right up her alley because she's just a huge zoology buff. So, Amelia, there is a recommendation for you.
And it's not so bad, right? Anne's just sad, but the guy with the animals is actually protecting them.
Yeah, I can't remember what happened to the little creature, but I guess I'm not allowed to ask. I remember it from the book.
Well, it doesn't feature in the rest of the book. Maybe if I write a sequel, it'll make an appearance. But it did. When I was writing it, I did consider having it tag along with them for the rest of the book. But it really would have been very difficult to keep this thing in a camper, which is where most of the rest of the book takes place.
That'd be a bit kind of Hanna-Barbera, wouldn't it? You know, the kind of like the animal sidekick who helps them solve mysteries.
Did I call it Johnson? Pavlin is reminding me that actually this book is called Interchange. So, if you want to
The thing about your books, Dan, as well, is I always have difficulty figuring out who's my favorite biome. So in your first one, it was a toss-up between the toy makers and the glasslands. So, but in this one, there are even more, and I didn't see the patterns. Like, did you have the overall pattern when you finished Junction, or did you, because it all slotted into the end of this book, it slotted in really neatly.
Right. Ooh, no, I didn't. I made that up.
What? Oh, damn. Darn.
Right. So there is a pattern to the geography of these things that we didn't know about. But I put in hints that there's a reason for it. So I won't give things away any more than that, I think.
No, sorry, I don't mean to give away.
Right? No,
tell you my best. The thing about it is, as well, my favorite passage in your book is your description of a pigeon. So
where I described it as if it was an alien.
As if it was an alien, yeah.
What is this strange beast that she's seeing? And I was like, no, it's a pigeon.
Chicken-covered scales, yes.
My favorite passage in the book is actually where they're all just getting drunk in the it's a real kind of it reminded me of the scene in Jaws, you know, when they're kind of like, you know, they're just kind of like sharing war stories, and it's kind of like, it's a really, really nice humanizing scene. And I thought that was the scene that kind of like that really got me to fall in love with those characters.
Thank you. It was at the time I was reading a lot of business management how-to books, and for my other job, and I was like, well, Farhad has probably read all of those books too, so he's going to do the same stuff.
Was one of them get everyone drunk and just like talk about past trauma?
Yep, exactly.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, these are some serious books.
I'm going to say that's usually like on school trips and, you know, any sort of expeditions. That's what really bonds people is.
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
No, I'm surprised that there's a kind of like there's a managerial book that actually has something halfway, you know, cogent to say. That's kind of like,
yeah, right. Yeah. I found some good ones. Those ones in particular were Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, I think is his name, and I think the Getting Drunk. What was the Getting Drunk one? Brene Brown has stuff to say about that, and there's another book called Crucial Conversations. And then also, I have to admit, I was watching some Korean office dramas at the time, and I understood something about business drinking. But I realized that I meant that scene to showcase the animals, but it had a lot of people in it too. So you heard some of the different characters. There's Anne, the biologist. There's Daisuke, who's her boyfriend. There's the zookeeper, is this Indonesian guy who's part of the army guys who were hired by Farhad, who's an Iranian American billionaire who has put this whole thing together, and then his administrative assistant Aimee. And there are a bunch of other people too, and they all got drunk together. And in Junction, in the first book, a bunch of people got killed, but in Interchange, nobody gets killed. So I can give
spoilers.
Spoilers, but some of them get very sad. So
there are some fates that are worse than death. So
right, well, I won't tell you who gets very sad. Some of them do. All right, let me find out who our next winner will be. Again, randomize. The next person to win is okay. The first person on my list is Jenny, my agent, who has one of these books.
No, so I Jenny rolls a retreated my tweets. I purposely didn't put her in.
I know what I'm going to do though. I'm going to give Jenny something she doesn't have. I'm going to give her my comics.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Yeah, because my publisher has some of my comics to send to someone, and that person will be Jenny. And then I'll raffle off Interchange itself at the end of our.
Jenny's just probably no. You can't give me one of these books. Thanks for that. Thanks for the vote of confidence there, Jenny. We really appreciate that. That's a great sign, isn't it? When your own agent is like, no, I don't want these in my house.
I've seen those enough. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to Neil.
Okie dokie. So first of all, I actually have two editions. Okay. When we do the raffle, you get your choice of either the lovely white US edition or the equally lovely blue UK/Commonwealth edition. So let us know which one. Oh,
yeah, it came in the post. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Trilby. I really appreciate it. I have yours downstairs. It's on my TV. I'm waiting for like half an hour to myself where I can just kind of actually sit and read a book.
Yeah.
But I promise I will read it. I'm so sorry I haven't read it. I should have read it before today.
Well, I'm about halfway through yours, so fair dues.
Well, thank you. Now I feel even more guilty. So I'm a terrible friend. Okay. So When the Sparrow Falls is set in a totalitarian state 200 years from now on the banks of the Caspian Sea. It's where the last organic human beings have kind of clustered together to against a world that is more or less now being run by artificial intelligence, which they don't like and they don't distrust. So they're living in this brutal totalitarian one-party state. And our main character, Nikolai Andreevich South, is a low-ranking agent in the State Security Agency, or Stasek. And he and his boss have just come back from a double contran. So what a contran is where you decide, I'm getting out of this country, and you pay someone to digitize your consciousness and send it to basically live on the internet outside of the Caspian Republic, which is very, very illegal. So now, in the course of this investigation, South warned the old man who owned the house where the contran took place in to get the hell out of Dodge, basically, because he knew that party security, or Parsec, who are even nastier than Stasek, are going to be coming to round him up and take him away and certainly torture him and quite possibly kill him. So he really stuck his neck out on the line to warn this old man to run. And he's just kind of like waiting now for the other shoe to drop. The building that would one day become State Security Headquarters had begun its life as the Neftkala Grand Hotel, once considered the finest hotel in Elulgrad. You would never have thought it to look at the place now, so perfectly did it suit its current purpose. As you mounted the grim, exhausting outer staircase, the facade loomed over you like a grim temple in a foreign land. Once inside, you were in what had once been the lobby of the hotel and was now the reception area of Stasek. Perhaps it had been intended to impress visitors with its magnificent scale and forest of brown marble pillars that extended past the grand stairway and led one's eyes towards the reception desk. But now the impression it gave was that one was an animal, alone in a forest, walking in plain view of anything that could be lurking in the shadows. The ones who entered were always watched. The ones who watched were always unseen. As I say, it was difficult to imagine that the building had ever been anything but Stasek HQ. Greer and I fell into a silent lockstep as we crossed the vast checkered marble floor, our footsteps echoing against the pillars. So vast was the space that it took a few moments to realize that we were not alone in the lobby. Lounging against a pillar like a weasel on the roof of a chicken coop was Nard Vernon. He had worked under Greer before me, and as far as I could see, he was the lone human being that Greer actually seemed to like on a personal level. Vernon took his place beside Greer as he walked, and it was as if I did not exist, which suited me fine. I knew the Vernons of this world and knew well enough not to draw their attention. Like Greer, Vernon was ex-army. He'd served in the north of the country in the Polyadar Rayon. Buy him a drink and he'd start to make jokes about being involved in the Shaki massacre. Personally, I doubted that. He would only have been in his late teens at the time. But you can tell a lot about who a man is from the kind of man he pretends to be, and in Vernon's case, I loathed both of them. "How are you, brother?" Vernon asked cheerily. "You look happy." "Fuck off," Greer muttered. Vernon tuttered with mock disapproval. "Tell me your troubles, Greer," he said in an approximation of sympathy that he had honed over the years to a kind of rough semblance of the real thing. "Double Contran in old Baku," Greer growled. "A banquet of shit has been laid before me, Vernon. 7 fucking courses." "Oh, well, not to worry. You'll find a man," said Vernon. "Oh, by the way, are you fond of Brother South at all?" I stopped. So did Greer. Vernon was fixing me with a shiny-eyed grin. The weasel had entered the chicken coop. "South? What do you mean?" Greer barked. "He's been called upstairs," said Vernon. "Nyman wants to see him." I felt the kind of weightlessness and panic that can usually only be induced by a doctor with a grave face and a hushed voice. "Me," I whispered. "South?" said Greer incredulously. "That's right," said Vernon. The man enjoyed pain. I wondered why Parsec hadn't snapped him up. Greer fixed me with a cold, indifferent stare. "I know no one by that name," he said. "I never have, and I never will." With that, he walked off with Vernon, who was chuckling. "I thought you might say that." I felt like my bones had turned to water. I'd run through 7 or 8 scenarios as to what would happen when it was discovered that I had warned Smallno to run. None of them, not the worst, most bizarre, most paranoid of them, had involved a summons to the office of the Deputy Director of State Security. What could Augusta Nyman possibly want with me? And scene.
Scene. Delightful. Delightful. You could actually do the accents.
Like, I did a stint as a voice actor, so I kind of in Irish though. I don't know if I ever told you this. I voiced Batman in Irish.
No kidding, seriously?
I should clarify this. I didn't voice Bruce Wayne. I voiced Terry McGinnis, who's the kind of like the Batman of the future.
Oh, wow.
Okay. What does Batman sound like in Irish, Neil?
Oh God, can he even
because you can't
Sarlakim her near chassis and vod in some apocalypse Gaumilisani Akfar Mahabe or something. That's the only line I can remember.
Yay! What's apocalypse? I understood apocalypse.
That's what I was trying to remember what the Irish for apocalypse is. So what he's saying is my father wasn't a superhero. He didn't hold the line in the apocalypse of 2009, but he was a good man. And it's the episode where he learns that Bruce Wayne is his real father or his biological father. Or I only actually I only got the scenes that I had dialogue in, and I only I got them out of sequence. And my Irish is not fantastic, so I still don't know to this day what exactly was going on in that episode. But I gave it socks.
The phantasmagorical version that you invented in your mind to make sense of it all.
So Neil, you've done actually a lot of drama. I think you can feel it in your writing. You can feel with the pacing and the understated. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I really like. I mean, I did write a few novels when I was in my teens and my early 20s, but then I kind of like I just switched completely to drama once I joined Dram Soc in college, and and this is actually the first, and Sparrow was the first novel I'd written in like well over 10 years. So, and it was adapted from a play as well.
I was going to say you had told me previously that it was a play.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I read it before I knew that it was a play, and then listening to it now, I had heard it was a play, and I was like, well, you had to have added a lot of stuff, like all of the metaphors and the
like
the hen house. I love that weasel.
So that scene actually is not in the play. The play is basically, if you have a scene in the book that's just South and Lily talking, or just Nyman and South talking, that was in the play, and everything else was kind of added on. So there are a lot of characters and a lot of subplots that kind of got layered on top of it. The play is a much more basic version of the story. It's just really it's just the story of Lily, South, Paolo Zarao, kind of even though he's never actually appears on stage, and Nyman, and that's more or less it. Yeah. So Amelia's just saying, I read the play and I was still shocked by all the subplots. And that's because there were too many subplots for a play. Plays really should not have that many subplots. It was never a good fit for a stage play. It was just...
I think one of the things about novels as opposed to plays is that you can have that internal, you have such a clear... you can see the internal dialogue so much more clearly, and you can have that detail, and you can have that complexity that you can't really get. I mean,
what I found very interesting is how it changed South without even really, like, he doesn't really do anything much differently in the play that he in the play that he does in the novel, but because you're constantly in his head, and you can actually see the decisions he's making in the thought process and how he's assessing everything and how he's constantly on the lookout for danger. He comes across as much cannier, I think, in the novel. In the play, he's a bit more of a bumbler. He's kind of like just a normal guy, just way in over his head, just trying to survive as best he can. But because in the novel you're kind of like you're there behind his eyeballs, I think he comes across as a much sharper character.
But is that truer to what you wanted him to be?
It's actually no. It's more he's drifted quite a bit from what I originally wanted him to be. Like not in a bad way, but my original conception for South was that he would kind of like I saw him as kind of like as a Stanislav Petrov kind of figure. When he was, I don't know if you've heard of him. He was the Soviet air marshal, who was basically, he was manning his desk, and there's light flicking on the screen saying there's an incoming American nuke, and he's supposed to report this up the line so that the Russians can get their birds in the air and end the world. And he just decided, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to report. If either this is a mistake or we're dead anyway, so I'm not going to do anything. And by doing nothing, he became one of very, very few people who can legitimately be said to have saved the world. I found that incredible. I found that idea of someone who's heroic, not because of they're a man of action, but because they're a man of inaction. Because they, like, as I always, it was kind of like, I mentioned Petrov in my wedding speech, actually, and it was just kind of like, because because the whole event actually happened the day before I was born. So I was kind of like, I was using this as an example, just to tell all these guests at my wedding how I'm an incredibly lucky person and always have been, because I very nearly wasn't born at all. And it was just thanks to Stanislav Petrov that they're all here at my wedding today. And it was just kind of, so there was, I just loved, I loved this idea of this guy who just kind of like hates his desk job and just decides, no, I'm not going to do this. And by ending up and so he saves the world. And South kind of drifted from that quite a bit. In the novel, he is a bit more conventionally heroic. He does do some detective work. He is kind of like, there are scenes where he puts himself in great physical danger, and he is a bit more active. But I think the kind of like the sentiment is still there. That just the guy just trying to keep his head down, trying not to get shot, and who's just trying to hold on to his soul in this very, very brutal totalitarian system.
And you think about it, and in a way, that's the only way you can survive in those totalitarian systems.
Yeah.
I think, and that's how people are.
Well, and that's why I never have any patience for people who kind of like, oh, if I was, living in Nazi Germany at the time, I would have done this and I would have been fine. And like, no, you fucking wouldn't have. That's not like, no, you would have been trying to survive like every other human being who has ever lived. And maybe, you might have, but you can't know that. You can't know, and like it's people. That's why you don't really have the right to judge people who live in countries like this, because we will never know. We will never know the fear, and we will never know the sensation of having the government kind of like just camped out in your head, watching your every thought.
Hopefully, Pavlina is someone. No, I think that Neil is too shy to say this, but Pavlina has said that she's saying come teach history in Sofia. But before that, she said,
I'm sorry, my knowledge of Bulgarian history is pretty pathetic, so I'm going to have to pass on that. It's a very kind offer.
But before that, she said that line about you can tell something about someone from who they pretend to be. She's going to use that in her business training.
Take it with my blessing.
That's some real insight.
Yeah, you can tell I worked in the civil service, can't you?
The grim,
so much of Skazek comes from my old job. I tell you, it's there's a scene where South is basically when he's brought into Nyman's office and she rakes him over the coals because he applied for a job that he did not have the kind of like the political connections to apply for, and that's basically that happened to me. That was kind of like that scene was just taken verbatim from personal experience. So.
Wow. Yeah, I really what hooked me into the book was the scene at the beginning where the Parsec guy comes into South's room and sort of makes himself at home in his kitchen and starts drinking his milk and being a jerk, and South is like, "You're so stupid. You're just a stupid person." And there is in a just universe would have no power over me. And yet, here we are, where you have a lot of power over me.
Yeah, because I think that the kind of people that are really dangerous somewhere like that it's not necessarily the kind of like the diabolical geniuses. It's the idiots, the people who are just gonna like follow the party line without an original thought in their head. Yeah, and so that was kind of important to me, that Chernov not be too glamorous and not be too cool. Is just like, no, this guy he's just a fucking idiot, but he's still very, very, very dangerous. Because this is the kind of system that rewards people like him and puts people like him in positions of life or death over their fellow citizens.
Yeah, so spot on. Okay, so I'm who's gonna win this amazing book?
Blue or red?
Okay, I have Catherine Lundoff. Is Catherine Lundoff in our chat?
I haven't seen her name coming up. It's a pity we can't actually like just respond to the chats. I thought that's a bit strange. Or can you guys?
Yeah, some of the comments are really cute.
Okay. Let's do it. Let's respond to the chat, and please, audience, please ask us questions or tell us something, and we'll. That's what we're doing. We're talking about it.
I'm just going to say, Wayne Loudon here has said that he really liked First Knife. He thought it was
First Knife is so good.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
It was so good.
I should explain. First Knife is Daniel Benson's comic before this
And
book.
Simons and Simons was also the author, and Artyom Trakhanov is our illustrator, and Jason Wordy did the colors. So and it all came together so beautifully.
It really, really did. It's such a beautiful work. It's like the artwork is fantastic. The world building is just so well thought out and just so fascinating. And it's such a different new like far future setting. It's really, really check it out.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what you do, Dan. You do world building amazingly. And I always appreciate your worlds.
Thank you. I like them too. I get a lot of reviews that are like, "Oh, the world building was great. There were some characters and stuff too, but don't worry about them. The world is what." I'm like, "Thank you." But yes, I had a lot of fun with that. There's some. I wrote some folk songs, far future folk songs. Hi, Annie.
Give us a rendition there, Dan.
Yeah.
Take out your guitar. Sing us the songs of the future.
Oh, what was the song? What does he say? Let me tell my story now, so I am not abstruse. What does that to go? No, and that's why I'm stuck with the goose. Oh, honka-daily, hoo. Cleaning goose is all I ever get to do. How I wish instead of me that I was you. Oh, honka-daily, hoo. And that's the song of the gosherd who herds the geese.
Jenny has just asked a question. She says, I wonder if Trilby and Dan would like to share thoughts about where their villains come from.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to go, Dan? Oh, okay, I'll go. So in the early 2000s, there was a guy who he was a con man in Britain and in the UK, and he had impersonated an MI5 agent for over 10 years. And it had all come out that he had been doing this. He got his victim. He had several women who were forced to go on the run, and they would have to do things like clean houses or act as prostitutes. And he actually had children with one of these women. He had 2 children. And when the police finally caught up with him, and these kids and their mother had to reintegrate with the world, having thought that they were on the run from the IRA ever since they've been born. And I just wanted to know, in one way you think, well, someone who's been trained to be a secret agent from birth, it's a trope that you find a lot in fiction, but what would that be in reality? And what was it like for these kids? Did it damage them for life, or did it give them skills that none of us have? None of the rest of us have.
Yes, it's
so, and he got away with it too. They decided he was done for kidnapping, but then the conviction was overturned because the women could have walked out at any time, but because they believed they were on the run, they never did.
Yikes!
Yeah. So.
Wow. That's a philosophical argument that they weren't prepared for in that courtroom.
No, and yeah, he's still out there somewhere.
Jesus Christ! Like he's literally on the run, or he's just like we know where he is, or
no, he's just living in society. I assume he's changed his name, but he's free man now to do what he wants. So
he breeds goldfish or something very innocuous. He's fine.
Yeah, I don't know how you I assume he must have changed his name. So.
Yeah.
So Dan, how about your characters?
How about my characters?
Your evil guys.
I was thinking about who's my villain in Interchange. The antagonist is certainly Farhad, who is the this eccentric billionaire who's arranged this whole trek across Junction, and he's the antagonist because his goals are opposed to the protagonist, to Anne, but are Anne's goals the right ones? And he makes Farhad makes a very good case for himself. I like I said, I based him off of some management books that I read, and off of off of the recent biography of Elon Musk, and then I filled in the rest from what his background would have, what his personality would have to be like, as he escaped from Iran when he was a teenager, and slowly made his way to the U.S., where he established himself as a .com guy, and so he has, in a way, he's never left the border between Iran and Turkey, and so I really like him. I think he's a great guy, but he's the antagonist of the story. And then his sort of henchman is this physicist named Moon, who I guess is more like a real villain. He does some bad stuff, but I based him off of myself. So
really,
so yes, I was like, what if I took my frustration with other people not understanding me and turned that up to 11? And so this guy is trapped in his own universe, and he can't unbend enough to actually communicate with anybody else. And so from his perspective, he's surrounded by strange creatures that come and go and tell him arbitrary things, and he has no control over any of them, and he resents the hell out of all of them. So it's a bit.
Tell us how you really feel, Dan.
That's how I feel. Shut up! I hate you.
Yeah, I know a lot more about your relationship to your father now than I.
Yeah. No, well, that part isn't true. But sometimes I whenever I start to feel like that, I know that I'm doing something wrong. So what if I didn't know? What if I just thought that was the way things were? That's Moon.
But writing the bad characters is the most fun.
Yeah, that's the best part. Yeah,
it's the best.
Yeah,
I'm always about three.
I don't know necessarily sorry, Trilby, I could have crossed you there. Apologies.
I was going to say I often get 3/4 of the way through a book or a movie, and I'm like, oh man, if only they won just for once, the bad guys.
Great.
Amelia's just asked Trilby, you and me, whether there's anyone from our books that are like us.
Yeah, the main character has aspects of her personality that are like mine as well. So, like Dan, I took the ability to think I know more about anything than anyone else. Especially with respect to like nerve agent or, how to perform operations, crawling under fences and stuff like that. And I did put that unlikable characteristic into her a little bit. So
yeah, well, I don't think you can actually write like first person without without kind of like elements of yourself kind of like going into that character. I mean, I think Nikolai is definitely, I think he's me in 2 decades from now. That's actually really depressing. I'm only 2 decades younger than him. If basically he fucked up in every way that it is possible for a man to fuck up. I do that kind of a lot. My protagonists are quite often me, just dark mirror universe me, where just everything went wrong. I think his sense of humor is definitely mine. So yeah, it kind of like there's I think there's a lot of me in Nikki South. Emil has just asked our favorite sci-fi book series, which is a fantastic question.
Yeah. Sci-fi book series. Go
There's
ahead.
so many to choose from. Okay, I guess if for the moment I'm going to go with. Well, gosh. Okay, so probably Rivers of London. I'd have to say.
Oh, good choice.
Yeah.
Good choice. I love those books.
I love
I
those
really
books
like
too.
the magical system in those books.
Although that is technically fantasy, so are we expanding it to fantasy, or are we just saying sci-fi?
Oh, okay.
Because that changes my answer completely. If we're allowed,
Give us a sci-fi one.
Okay, give us a sci-fi one.
Umi?
Yeah.
Yeah, you.
I love the Hyperion Cantos. Just fantastic, like basically science fiction retelling of the Canterbury Tales in space with a massive robot that appears at random. Yes, the Shrike, like one of the best monsters in all of science fiction. When are we going to get a series? When are we going to get a big, prestigious HBO Hyperion Cantos series?
That'd be great.
They've been talking about it for years. Bradley Cooper was attached at one point.
Oh, no kidding.
And we haven't heard a peep. And I would just I think that's just. I can see the like. Unfortunately, John Hurt has passed on now because he would have been perfect as Martin Sillinus. But I don't know. I live in hope that one day we will see it done justice. How about you, Dan?
I'm trying to. I would like to do something. I'd like to do a new book, but I can think of a new fantasy series that I like. But with science fiction, I keep coming back to Werner Vinge. So it's a series of sorts. It's 2 books. It's A Fire Upon the Deep and A Deepness in the Sky. If you want to read them in the other order, that's okay too. I listened to them as audiobooks while I was writing Interchange, and they were very evocative. They were very inspiring. It was also toward the right at the beginning of the coronavirus lockdown that I was listening to A Deepness in the Sky, where the bad guys are from this civilization that is where the basic social unit is the pod, and the bad guy is the pod master. And I'm like, oh well, here we go. So Fire Upon the Deep. Trilby, what's your science fiction?
Okay, science fiction. I'm sorry, it's going to be an old one too. Is the Mars Trilogy. I loved that.
Is that
sorry?
But anyway,
Asimov, I think, or
no.
Kim Stanley Robinson.
You got it, Kim Stanley Robinson. And the reason why I love that one. So it let's see, are there 5 books? There's 3, 4. It's Red Mars, Green Mars, and Blue Mars.
Oh,
Mars
yes,
and Green Mars.
I've read Blue Mars.
Yeah. So and what I loved about that series so much was that to me it really reflects the change in the internet that we've seen over the past decades. So I went online in 1989, right? One of the first 1,000% of the people who've been on.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was a bunch of scientists, idealism, who were very idealistic. And we all thought, if information is free, it will change the world. It will be beautiful. And as the companies came, as the companies got involved, as the governments got involved, as society, in full got involved, we've seen it change. And a lot of ways, what he said about Mars and the society, and how society changed and how Mars changed really, really parallels that a lot. So I'm one of those immortal ladies that was one of the first colonists who discovered the world of immortality.
I remember we said Mars, Andy Weir's books. They're recent. They're new. Yeah. They're science fiction. I recommend the hell out of them. I just read Hail Mary.
Oh gosh, yes.
Right, and he. I think that I know something about aliens, and I really like his Alien.
Oh,
I really like his Alien.
I didn't know there were alien. I've only read The Martian, so I didn't know he actually.
Oh well, you don't know yet. He had a lot of fun with xenobiology in Hail Mary, and I said alien singular, but actually it's plural. It's quite a lot plural. So he does some really cool stuff that I haven't seen done before.
Cool. Paulina has asked, to all three of you, what was the hardest part of writing your books? Did you ever want to give up?
Well, guys, what was the hardest part of writing your books?
You don't want to say. The hardest part of writing I don't know, the most recent hard part was when I got the proof edits back. And the email said, we have, here are the proofs, please edit them and send them back to us. And don't worry, there's another editor looking at this. So you're not the last line of defense. Right. But when I read the first sentence, I panicked. I didn't read the rest of the email. And I thought that I was the last line of defense. Oh, so I spent that week freaking out, because the hardest part before that was over Christmas, when I had to do the first round of edits, and I totally screwed it up because I sent them a version of the document, and then they made changes to it, and then I made changes to mine. So when the time came to merge those things, it resulted in a huge mess.
Oh no!
So children, listen to me. When this happens to you, don't make any changes to your document. When you get edits back from the editor, accept them, and then you can do stuff on top of that. I was going nuts over that sort of thing in several waves of insanity. So that was the hardest part for me.
The hardest part for me was actually writing the play that the book was based on, because that took 6 or 7 years. Once I had that done, writing the book was actually incredibly easy. It just took me a few months. Like I started writing in November 2017. I had a first draft ready February 2018, and it was substantially the book that is now being published. I will tell you the scariest part of writing the book. So in the book, there are 3 super artificial intelligences, 1 Chinese, 1 American, and 1 European. So the Chinese one is called Confucius. The American one is called George, after George Washington, and the European one is called Artemis, after the Greek goddess of wisdom. And all this kind of like, and it's like all the time I was writing this, it was kind of like, it was Artemis, the Greek goddess of wisdom. Artemis, the Greek goddess of wisdom. Artemis, this went through edits after edits after edits. Artemis, the Greek goddess of wisdom. 2 months before it's to go to print, I looked it up on Wikipedia. It's like, Athena. I meant Athena.
Oh no!
And I'm just like, can we change this? Can we please change this so the entire world doesn't think I'm an absolute idiot? And thankfully the publishers were like, baby, this is what Find and Replace was made for. Relax, we're fine. But like literally, like it was the month the book was actually to go to the presses.
Oh my gosh.
That it clicked with me that I've made this. I actually had I had a backstory kind of like drafted to explain why the European Union had named their one Artemis instead of Athena. Just to explain, and it was going to be like they created Athena first, but Athena was a disaster, and it didn't work. So then they created Artemis, who's kind of like Athena's younger, more nimble sister. And it's actually very clever. But fortunately, I didn't have to use that because we were able to catch it in time. Oh my god, that's in case you're wondering why my hair is gray. That's the reason why.
Oh no, Neil, I had that too. One of my last beta readers was like, why are you talking about centrifugal force? It doesn't actually exist as a force. And I'm like, I know, because like one of the scariest things for me is like, she's like terribly intelligent. She's got all these things, she knows all this. And I thought I'd research it all, but boy, yeah.
Yeah, but what do you say instead? You're like centrifugal tendency of an object to stay in motion. Like, what do you say instead of force?
I think I cut the whole sentence. I was like, I got that.
You do.
Fix that right.
What was your scariest thing, Trilby? Or most difficult thing?
The most difficult thing has been the editing. So I had so much fun writing it. And I based it off of, quite a few very extreme. I was inspired by extreme stories, shocking stories, all sorts of things. And a lot of it, I had to sit there and say, have I gone too far? Or other people, or have I not gone far enough? And other people were like, well, there's one scene in the book, of course, it's a terribly handsome FBI agent. And, of course she's attracted to him, and handling that, each person who read it had a different take on it. And so I knew I was never going to get it right, but it's in there, and, it's, yeah. I mean, I'm still not sure I've got it right, but there it is.
Well, these have been some great questions. Thank you, everyone, who's been watching and commenting and showing all these great authors some love. Have we given away all the things?
No,
we
have not.
Okay, I think
one thing left to give away,
okay,
which is Junction. So here I go.
Okay.
My mom is on the top of the list, so she can give it to someone. She already has one, but she can give it to somebody else.
Awesome. All right. Well, anyone who wasn't here, we don't have direct contact for. We've got your Twitter handles, so we will
figure it out.
We will, like we said, we will find you. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This has been a lovely way to start my day, to end yours, probably. And I want to remind you that if you have people who were not able to live,
sorry.
If there are people who are not able to watch live, this video does remain on our the Magers and Quinn YouTube channel, so anyone can watch it anytime after today. So thanks so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Great
Bye,
talking to you
guys.
guys. Right.
Thank
Take
you.
care.